Hey, everybody, this is Seth Keeping It Real. I am very privileged to be able to interview Scott, who is part of Intercultural Elements, also known as ICE. They have been helping online retailers, people who sell online, to expand their sales internationally. They've been doing this over a decade. The reason this is so important is, as you guys know, selling internationally is becoming increasingly important over the last 10 years. Not just because the world is getting smaller with the ability to communicate and do e-commerce, but that's what the competition is doing. And so when you sell in multiple markets, you differentiate yourself just like trading stocks and bonds, and it increases your chance of succeeding and it de-risks you from failing. So Scott, thank you so much for being here today, man.
Hey, thank you so much for the invitation, Seth.
Absolutely. And you're in Germany right now. What part of Germany are you located right now?
Right, so we're based in Leipzig, so that's about maybe an hour and a half southwest of Berlin. So relatively centrally located in Germany. Very, very nice area to live.
What we're going to do today is we're going to jump straight into helping you guys sell internationally. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what Scott does. And he's going to do everything in German. Right, Scott?
And absolutely. Let's go for
it. Awesome. Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Ja, schon ein bisschen.
Very good. Very good. I'm actually German by blood, but I know very little German. I took 1 year in high school, so that would not work for me, but that's awesome. It works for you. and you guys, this is so key. There was this UK-based company called Global Football Company, and they approached Intercultural Elements and said, we need your guys' help. They were already selling, but they needed help. They wanted to expand. They wanted to grow. After working with Intercultural Elements, their sales grew 1,300% on Amazon Germany alone. That's like 60,000 pounds year over year. And that's after they signed up with them, and they've continued to expand. And this is just one of many success stories where ICE was able to help an international seller succeed and expand and get better. So the reason I'm sharing this with you guys is if you're selling on Amazon or you're starting to, think about selling internationally now. And so I'm going to start by asking Scott, how did you guys get started?
It's not all down to me, right? It's actually my two business partners, my wife, Anya, who's German, and a friend of ours, Edward, who's Dutch. The three of us traveled together back years and years ago, back like 99, 2000, on a sort of a traveling education program. And the main purpose of that program was really to sort of work together in an intercultural environment. And from that, we really sort of got hooked on this whole interculturalness, so to say. And we had the idea, a bit of a pipe dream back then, but we said, wouldn't it be cool to found some sort of company based on these intercultural ideals and different cultures and countries working together. So we had that idea. We all sort of kept on doing our own things. Edward finished off his PhD. We went off to Germany, got married, did our thing. And then around about 2007, I got back together and we said, how are we going to make this actually into a company? And at that point in time, we said, we have to make this so that we can make some money out of it, right? Intercultural training's really hard to get started, hard to get a foothold. But we had a great opportunity because I was working for Channel Advisor, a listing tool at the time. And I was dedicated to the UK team, to the London team there. My job was really to teach people how to use the software. But what people found time and time again was the software was great. It worked really well. They could sell theoretically all over the world. But if you envision that software almost like a highway system, right? Great network of highways, but there was no vehicle to get you there because they couldn't translate anything and they didn't know the cultures in Germany, France, Japan, all around the world to be able to effectively sell in those cultures. And that's where we said, there you go, light bulb moment. We can take this intercultural thing, link it up with e-commerce. And that's how we started. Back in 2007, very small, just the three of us. And I think we've been very, very lucky, have some great customers, really great employees. We've grown to about 55 employees from 15 different countries. So we've been really lucky.
You guys, Scott, have a really unique approach, which I love, is you guys focus on the cultural side, even as your name says. So you're not just, here's how to do it, the tactical, but how to effectively communicate to unique cultures. Like, for example, on our team, we have people from 70 countries whom are training to sell on Amazon.
Right.
And one of the biggest challenges people run into is when they want to create a listing, let's say from Mexico, Amazon Mexico,
Yep.
or Amazon.co.uk
Right.
or .de, even if they get a translator, and hopefully they don't use Google Translate because that's not going to
Yeah.
be enough.
Right.
But when they do this, there's certain cultural nuances that they miss. And so they'll be smart. They'll say, hey, does anyone who lives or grew up in Germany, can they help me with this? Like, for example, I work with a lot of Hispanics and they'll
Yeah.
write it in English, but I can just tell
Yeah.
that their native language is not English. And that can discredit you might be a great person, but your credibility goes down
That's
when you're
exactly
selling
it.
to that, even though you're a great person, doesn't matter to the buyer. They're like, wait a minute, this sounds
Yeah.
like a foreigner. And
Yeah.
so how do you guys help people with that? I think that's so unique about what you do.
Yeah. And, Seth, you really hit it on the head, right? So, there's so many great sellers out there. They have great products. And as you said in the very beginning of the interview, right, it just makes sense to be selling all around the world at this point. Not only because your competition is doing it, but it's just a great business move, right? It's not rocket science. You're getting your same great product out to a lot more eyeballs, right? But you're totally right. You can always notice, and we've all had that experience, right? We've used Google Translate, right? Or we've seen things like, go online and you're looking for a product, and as you said, you can just tell it's been translated.
Right.
That's the whole point. Our philosophy is that, the reason why we have 15 different nationalities in house is so that if you want to go to Amazon Japan, for example, no problem at all. We have a staff of Japanese, people that not only translate it, but then they also do like the nuances, right? The things that you mentioned. Really important things like search terms, right? Because people are not going to find your product if you're putting in just translated terms.
Absolutely.
I think a great example is, funny enough, actually a UK linens seller that we had years ago, right? So he sold all types of bed linens, towels, things like that. And he was doing really well domestically. So naturally, he said, "Yep, I want to go to Germany and France." We said, "Great, perfect, we'll do that for you." So we
guess where this is going.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There may be some surprises in here too, right? So we start translating for him, and part and parcel of this is that we start doing some research into all of his products. So what we start figuring out is that bed sizes in different countries are different, right? So in France and Germany, they're actually different than in the UK.
Right.
So this well-meaning, great seller in the UK, he would have failed miserably if he had not have known that, because nobody would have bought that size sheet, right? So it's things like that. Also, the towels that he sold, he had no idea that towels in Italy are actually used a little bit differently than they're used in the UK, right? So a hand towel is actually used to wipe off your hands like it is in the US, right? But in, let's say, certain towels in Italy, they're used more decoratively, so they're never touched. So you have to have the search terms and the different words that you would put into the title reflect that. If not, you're simply not going to get any hits. So absolutely.
That's a really cool point, because this is so applicable to Amazon sellers right now. And everyone who's listening, think about this. Your goal is not just to make sure when the customer gets to your listing that they can relate to it so it converts. That's absolutely essential. We talked about that. But what Scott just referred to now is keywords, search terms. They're also going to have trouble finding your listing if the keywords that you built into your listing, the title, the bullet points, the back end, the product description, the PPC ad campaign, if those are not the way people think. So I might search a term that is very indigenous, colloquialism even to my country because I grew up in the United States, but I'm not thinking like a German who might put it a little differently. Like I have some British friends, I always laugh about, what are trousers? We don't use the word trousers. What does that mean? Or your stick shift, they call it a, what is it called? I forget. It's a,
Yeah.
a lever. It's a lever, like a lever. What? Even though we speak the same language, there's still cultural nuance. And to sell internationally, there has to be an increased appreciation for people internationally. And this is something that's happened so much for me personally on our team. We have people from 70 different countries. All of a sudden you go, man, I take things for granted. I never realized, I didn't think about it that way. And it really, you become a more full person as a result. And obviously you make more money as a result too, because you're being sensitive to other cultures. So this is really cool. Let me ask you this, Scott. Imagine that my friend Bobby McGee, he signs up with your program. Let's say he's doing $20,000 a month revenue. He's profiting about 50% on that, so $10,000 a month. So he is like an intermediate seller, a little bit new, but not super advanced, but not brand new. and he says, "Hey guys, I want to start selling in the United Kingdom. I'm selling in the US. What
Mhm.
does the process look like? How specifically would you help him? Could you just walk me through some of the steps and things that you guys would do?"
A services company. We're not a software company. And I think that's one of our major advantages. We have some tools that we've built in house to help us, but it's not like we say here's software, go ahead, because that stuff there's too
Right.
much specificity and cultural differences in there to be able to do that in a software. So
That makes sense.
exactly. So we're first and foremost services company. So when you go to our website, you're going to see a big breadth of services, but we basically break them down into three main parts. Okay. So, first one, we have to create a strategy for the seller, right? Because he has a niche, he's doing really well in the US, as you said, and we want to copy that success, right? We want to see what he's doing and copy that success in other countries, right? So, we'll take a look at the products, get a pretty good feeling, and then we'll have our team of international consultants take a look and figure out where he might be able to sell really well, in which countries, and then in which marketplaces in those countries. Naturally, Amazon is the 800-pound gorilla, but there's a whole slew of marketplaces that you can go to when you take countries like, for example, France. If you think of an e-commerce or e-commerce as sort of like a pie, you have a lot more divisions of that pie in a country like France, where Amazon, Cdiscount, La Redoute, Price Minister, there's lots more that you can go on. And it makes sense if you're translating into one language, then you should probably go into multiple marketplaces if you can, right? So we take all that into account. We figure out which countries and then which marketplaces in those countries he's going to be best selling in. Amazon Japan has, perfect market for you, or Trade Me in New Zealand, or
Nice. So you're kind of
whatever.
matching them to what works for them.
Exactly. And these people, they've never even heard of some of these marketplaces. But the fact is that there are niches there that they can do incredible at. So, anyway, so a bit of a long story long, but strategy, that's the first part. Secondly, we implement that strategy, right? So, based on that prioritized list of countries and marketplaces, we can go through and we can set them up in that, doing all the translation. All that translation is done in house. We localize everything. A bit of a subtle difference there. We can talk about that later if you're interested. And then we actually launch it into all those marketplaces, because again, we have the account managers who effectively sort of live in those accounts, and we can manage that on a day-to-day basis for them. There's strategy implementation, and then last thing is maintaining that success and growing, because of course you need customer service in the native language, right? We talked a little bit about those subtleties, but if you take Japan, for example, in the US, we have really sir, ma'am is like pretty much the only politeness form, right? In Germany, where I'm at, right, there's like Z and do. In Japan, there's like multiple levels. And if you get it wrong, then you're going to get negative feedback, right?
Interesting.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, so we have, customer service to help them there. And then also things like global returns. If they, selling to all these foreign countries, you need places to return your your products to. So we have warehouses for that. And even things like if sellers have websites, then we can do Google AdWords for them. We have a partnership with Google as well. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a little bit of a feeling. But suffice it to say, it's really an A to Z process. We do most of the stuff that people need to sell internationally in house. Whatever we don't do, we have tried and true partners that we've had good relationships with over the last decade that we can recommend them to.
In light of Amazon's focus on international sales just over the last 6 months, for
Right.
example, the drop down box never used to be. They could drop down, boom, here are all these countries. That's
Yeah.
become so convenient. Adding a UPC or a SKU, and boom, the reviews for one country are on the other. It'll stay for the other country, but it still gives you an advantage, like a head start. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, they actually have reviews. Like, guys, I'm telling you, Amazon's moving this direction.
Absolutely.
So what's going to happen is more sellers are going to keep jumping onto this train, the train of international selling. Don't wait until it's harder because of competition. Get in sooner. If you want that extra help to really make sure you are being indigenous or local to your customers, interculturalelements.eu. Interculturalelements.eu. Their website has everything on there where you can join. And here's the really cool part, you guys. We're going to be in Las Vegas, as you know, in just a few weeks. I'll get to meet you in person, Scott.
Yeah.
And Scott's actually going to be helping you with this right there in Las Vegas. So for those of you guys who are going to Las Vegas, you're not just going to get investors. You're not just going to learn how to do the new Amazon private label, which has some super cool secret stuff we're going to reveal there that we've never talked about before. but you're also going to get training on intercultural sales and customer service and building your store internationally. And if you guys want to get more information, interculturalelements.eu. Scott, last question, if you were to give advice to private label entrepreneurs out there, and think like we have such a wide range, people doing several million a month, people who have not yet opened their Seller Central, some who never bought on Amazon yet. Okay, so the range is really wide.
Yeah.
What advice, what encouragement would you give them today?
I would give a lot of encouragement and just say that there is huge potential out there, on Amazon in general, but then international Amazon, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? I think you and I are totally on the same page here, but, international Amazon, you should totally be doing it. I think to try to get this down into a nutshell, I would say just make sure that you're doing it right. I find it amazing when you see the blood, sweat, and tears that people stick into like day after day into their online business domestically. Yes. And yes. Then they cut corners when they go internationally. And right. I sort of get it because
like an add-on. It's like an extra thing. Let me just add that on and get a few more sales.
Exactly. And let's face it, right? It is a little bit tough, right? It's like, it's out of our comfort zone to be speaking a different language, deal with a different culture. We're just like, they'll do it the way that we do, right? But do it right. As you said, don't Google Translate, and make sure, I'll give some tips on what to look for translation wise. And the process has to be done right. So huge potential, but make sure that you're doing it right. Take the extra steps. And we have a lot of customers whose foreign marketplaces are actually doing better than their domestic ones. So
that's incredible. That's awesome. Guys, 2 things to remember before I close this. Number 1, attend the summit. You get to meet Scott, hear him teach, and a ton more. Number 2, if this video is helpful for you, like and subscribe below. And I'm also including the link of interculturalelements.eu so you can get more information on what they're doing. Scott, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know it's a lot later there than it is here, but I will see you, brother, in a few weeks. And thank you so much for helping people.
Hey, Seth, thank you for the invitation as well. And very, very much looking forward to hanging out in Vegas.
Awesome. Take care, man.
All right. Take care.
Auf Wiedersehen.